I'm Brittany. I'm a licensed elementary school teacher, but I'm staying home with my 2 kids right now. And today we're going to talk about homeschooling and Bible memory. Hi, so we're going to talk about the importance today of teaching children Bible memory versus catechism, basically teaching them to memorize things from a really young age. Now, when I say memorize, I'm not talking about math facts. I'm not talking about, the laws of physics. I mean, those are all great. They all have their place. But today we're going to talk about Bible memory, catechism, and hymns specifically. Now, the reason, there are several reasons that I think these things are so important. Number one is that children are just meant to absorb everything when they're young, and so the things that we learn first are the things that are going to stick with us. I heard that Ravi Zacharias often said that Friedrich Nietzsche, and he went insane in his. If you're not familiar with him, he was a very well-known philosopher, but he went insane during the last part of his life. But what he remembered, even though he that was not a Christian, he did not espouse Christian philosophy, he did not keep Christian ideals, is that he remembered the Bible verses that he was taught when he was young. His father was a pastor. I think his grandfather was a pastor, and those stayed with him even as he lost his mind. That's kind of a depressing way to start, but if you think about it, again, the things that we start with, the things that we learn when we're young, are the things that stick with us over the years. And that's really important for our kids. We want them to have that foundation. If you think about creating a building, so I've talked before about scaffolding, and how scaffolding is basically when kids learn and they build on other things that they've learned. We're building them in a very specific order. You don't teach physics before you teach basic double-digit subtraction. There's a certain order that you need to learn things in to get to have the base knowledge that you need for the next step up. And really, when we're homeschooling our kids, the most important thing our kids can have is a biblical foundation and a biblical worldview, because that is what everything else is going to be seen through, is that lens. And to do that, our kids need to have a base. Now, kids don't have abstract thought yet nailed until they're about 8 years old, and even then, obviously, it continues to progress as they get older. Hold on, I'm going to make my screen brighter. There we go. Okay. I'm like, wow, the screen looks weird. So as kids get older, they are capable of different kinds of thought. They're capable of discerning fallacies and understanding different kinds of arguments and different ways of speaking, speaking with different kinds of intentions. And so, but it's all built on a base. And we can't expect, like my kids are 2 and 5, I can't expect them to have a really great theological foundation yet, because a lot of the thought processes that go along with deep theology, hermeneutics, all that, it's not going to be, they're just not ready for it. But they can learn the information that they need, and then as they get older, we're going to build on that information. We're gonna support it. We're gonna move up on our level of understanding, and they need to have it memorized, because how many times have you tried to think of a phrase or a fact or something, and you're like, I know what the intent of this is, but I don't remember the information exactly. Children need to have that, because as they get older, their faith is going to be challenged. They're going to have people ask, why do you believe this? Or, I don't believe that. I believe something else. And our kids need to know what they believe. Even if they don't quite understand why, they need to know what it is. And then we will add to that as they get older and they understand why, but they still need to know. Great example. I learned the catechism let's see, this is first catechism. I learned this when I was little, and my mom taught it to us while we were homeschooled. And my son walks up to me the other day, and he's 2, and he goes, "Mommy, why God have spirit?" I was like, and then he goes, "God no have no blood." But I said the first thing that came to mind. Now I study theology. Obviously, I'm not a pastor. I've never been to seminary. I'm a lay person, but I have done a decent amount of reading. Hold on just a minute, ma'am. What are you doing? you need to go to your room, please. This is not where you're supposed to be. This is rest time in your room. Please obey me. Thank you. The first thing that came to mind, even though I've read books, I watch lectures, I listen to podcasts, I've been in church my entire life, was God is a spirit and does not have a body. And that's the answer in here. Let's see, which one is that? What is God? And then we went and talked, and I mean, he's 2. There's only so much we can talk about still, but that was the first thing that came to mind, even though I have done a lot more studies since I learned this when I was little. And so we really want to get those basic foundations in. And then as kids get older, we will teach them why, but we want them to know what we believe, because their faith is going to be challenged. And by the outside world and by their own questions, they're going to have their own questions. And we need to give them the answers so that if they're like, well, I have this question, they have the answer, and then they can come to us and we can explain why. But they need to know what the answers are. And I mean, this is an argument for, whether it's Bible memory or anything else. The more you memorize, the better you get at it. Back before we had, before most people knew how to write, the main form of storytelling was oral. People remembered things. Now we can barely remember our own phone numbers. So teaching children to memorize it's a skill that our society desperately needs. Kids desperately need to learn to memorize because they need to keep the information up here, because we might not always have Google available or even our ebooks, heaven forbid. I love my Kindle. And I love my bookshelf. I can go to it and I can pull something out and I can look at it and pull it up, but we need to have information up here. And the more children exercise that, the better they're going to get. Now, all that said, we need to have a caveat. Young children can't memorize everything. You'll have to go with just what they're ready for. My son has 3 questions from the Catechism. He's 2. He's still learning to speak, so we're taking it very slowly. We're just doing the simple questions. My daughter is older, so we are on question, I think, 33. And so we are, we're going, and if she seems to hit a point where we're hitting a wall and we can't move any further, then I realize, okay, we've gone far enough. We need to just work on what we know. And then, she'll hit another leap. We'll get to a place where we can keep moving. Ow. Sorry, I just cut myself again. Cut I already did this morning. So that's it. I'm going to talk about 3 different types of memorization that we use in our house. So the first one, and I've designed this planner, and yes, my son decorated it with my pens, but the Homeschooling for Life planner, I designed this. It doesn't actually have dates in it, so I left all the dates blank. Like this is one of the weekly ones, and you just fill it in. That way you don't, whether you work on a 9-month schedule, a 12-month, you're a military family, and you just do it around whenever you move. Or if you skip a few months and need to jump back in, that way you're not stuck with one planner, that you run out of the end. You're like, well, I only used 6 months, but I ran out because the year ended. You don't have to do that. But at the beginning, and I have a whole different episode on that, but at the beginning I give places where you can put goals for the year. Now this doesn't necessarily, if you don't hit all these, of course, it doesn't mean you failed. It's things that you want to work towards. So I have the ELA, math, science, but let's see. I haven't filled all of this out. Again, my kids are small. Let me see. Now this year I didn't fill everything out with like the Catechism because my kids are young. I made this with some of my friends in mind too who have slightly older kids, but I basically made it so that you can use it. It's supposed to be as flexible as possible. You don't live by the planner works for you. But I have an area where I wrote catechism goals. Now, I didn't fill this out because, again, I wasn't sure, my daughter was only 4 when I created this, so I wasn't sure how far we would be going that year. But for next year, I will be filling it out when we start. Okay, I did do this part. So I have Bible memory goals and I have hymn goals. Okay, so there's a reason I do all of these. I've already talked about the Catechism and why I think that's so important, and I will make sure to link this in the blog so that if you want to get this, you can. They're inexpensive. They even have PDF copies for free online if you Google it. This is by Great Commission Publications. Our church also sells a print copy of them for like $1. They're like this big, and our church's bookstore is just kind of on tables, and you just go and you it's an honor system. You put the money in for whatever you need. And it's a dangerous place for me because I buy things. But so Great Commission publications, and this is the one that I recommend. I know that the Wisconsin Synod for the Lutherans, WELS, Wisconsin Evangelical Lutheran, the WELS churches have their own because Martin Luther actually designed his own. Pretty cool. He wanted the children to, not just his children, but the neighborhood children, to learn about God. So he wrote his own, and he invited anyone who wanted to bring their child could come to his house, and they studied the Catechism with him. I mean, oh my goodness, can you imagine being at the feet of Martin Luther as a child? Okay, so next one, more obvious, Bible. And we're taking this, again, just as the kids are ready. Sometimes I'll start something and I just realize they're not quite ready for that yet. We got to pull back, and that's part of the game of homeschooling. Is you go, you pull back, you go, you pull back, or you go and you move forward, and you figure out what your kids are ready for. If your child can't do it, that probably means they're not ready, especially when they're younger. Now, when they get older, they do need to be stretched a little, but when they're little bitties, you just kind of work with what you can. But I made a list of ones that I think are very important for my kiddos to know. And again, same idea as with the Catechism, ones that gives the kids a foundation for, as they get older, to answer questions that will come up. We've done Genesis 1:1. We did the 23rd Psalm. We did, what are we working on right now? Psalm 46. Now, I will say, kids will not, unless you do this on a regular basis, kids will lose stuff. I mean, even if we go, like we were sick last week, so we didn't do a whole lot of catechism because we all felt horrible. And so kids will lose things easily. Now, I don't expect my children to memorize these pat and have them just done forever. What we're going to do is we're going to cycle. We're going to move through, we might go through 10 Bible verses and just keep going, and then we'll eventually come back and we'll go through those again. And the whole idea is to basically go through them so many times when they're little, so that when they're older, they have the words, they're just on the tip of their tongue. It's just there. And so again, you don't, especially when kids are young, don't expect them to memorize everything perfectly. Don't expect them to have it, retained forever once it's done. You'll have to keep it up, and eventually you hit a point you have so much memorized you can't review it all every day. So pick the ones that are really important, use those to remember, use those to review, and then with the others, cycle through them. Go back and, move forward and go back and move forward and go back. And as they get older, the more they become familiar with it, the more they're going to have it right there as an answer. The third thing that I recommend people teaching their kids to memorize are hymns. We use the Trinity hymnal. I'm at our church. And I don't do every hymn in here because I don't know every hymn in here. But when I was growing up, we were homeschooled, and then when my mom had to go back to work, we went to a WELS Lutheran school. We're PCA, but we went to a WELS school, and they made us memorize a hymn a week. And we were there for 4 years. And so I memorized a lot of hymns. So did my brothers. But it's such a blessing, because today I can't tell you how many times I've been feeling scared or alone or discouraged, and the hymns just pop up in my mind, and I can sing them to myself, and I know I'm singing with the saints from hundreds, sometimes even hundreds and hundreds, maybe even 1,000 years ago. I'm singing with those saints, in essence. I'm remembering the people who have done this before me, and I know that I'm not alone. And it's such a gift to be able to praise God without having to really come up with new words. They're there, and you can use them, and you can praise God and worship Him when you're happy, when you're scared. And that's a gift I want my children to have. It's also a gift to, when you move churches, have songs that when you switch churches. We at our church, we don't do Psalms only, but a lot of the hymns are Psalms. So what I did through is, when I went into my planner, I picked out the more common hymns that we sing at my church and at other churches I've been to, and I picked those. Now again, I might go back later one day and add more, but right now I'm just going through the basics. So, Worship the King. Let's see, what are some other ones? Holy, Holy, Holy. Let's see. Again, we've skipped most of these because there's how many in here? There's over 700 hymns, so we skip most of them. But I go through and I pick the ones that, again, we sing the most. Immortal, Invisible, God Only Lies. What are we working on right now? We're working on Rejoice, the Lord is King. And you don't need to have a beautiful singing voice. If you have a piano, it could be helpful to plink out the tune. But just giving children those songs, and it allows your children to worship with you in church. And it's such a gift to have your children worship with you in church. My daughter's 5. And because we've been doing this, she's starting to recognize and be able to sing with some of the hymns we have at church. And it's a fantastic gift to know the hymns. And so I highly recommend, having your kids work. And this does take time. And we're not perfect at it. I wish we did it more consistently than we do. We don't do it every day. We need to. Again, things come up, like we got sick last week, and so most schooling did not get done last week at all. But we usually do this, we try to do it around lunch. And so I will read the kids a chapter of whatever novel we're reading, because I read novels aloud to them, like a chapter a day at lunch. And then we'll sit and I will finish with these. And as you go through, again, if you don't want to do all of them, highlight the ones you like. My mom did that. She didn't think we were ready for one, or, maybe it was too long for us at the time. I don't know. Pick the ones you like. No one's going to come after you with a hatchet because you didn't do all of the questions. But especially the beginning ones are so important, because they cover the basics. So my son, he's 2. Who made you? God. What else did God make? God made everything. I will say, if you have a child who is in speech therapy or needs help with speaking, you don't need to be obsessed with getting everything perfect. I will say some of these I have memorized differently because they've changed it, since some of the wording since I was little. So this one is actually, what else did God make? God made all things. We do God made everything, because it's easier for my 2-year-old to say. He's learning to talk. He's 2. And if it's not an important word, if they substitute something or it's really not that important, you don't have to get upset because they didn't do it right. Just do it with the grace that you see necessary. Do it as your child is ready. But I can guarantee you, doing this will never hurt a child. It will only benefit them. Even if you go slow as Christmas and, can only do one question a month, even if they're not ready. My son's been doing this for months and he's not doing one question a month. We're doing this as I think he's ready, and it's not going to frustrate him. My daughter's 5. We're going much faster for her. So those are the 3 things that I would highly recommend for young children, getting them started with memorizing, because it's, again, you're never going to hurt a child by giving them the answers and giving them foundations and a way to worship God that they have in their head. It's already there. And just try to be as you can. Try to be consistent. Try to find something that works for your family to have those memorized. And I can promise you won't regret it. All right. Well, again, I will have the link to this I will have the link to this. I will have the link to these. Although I don't know, the Trinity hymnal is getting kind of hard to find. I think they might be doing a new edition. I'll see if I can find that. But there are ways to get hymnals. Basic Bible, I use ESV. You could use, what your family uses. I don't know what your family uses. But I use the ESV with my kids. First Catechism, I'll link this as well. I'll also link a free version in case you don't. I like the book copy because it gets, as you can tell, beat up pretty easily. But if you need to print it out, there are websites that do that. Okay. Well, I'll make sure. I want to make sure I don't break any laws. I'll do my best. So anyways, if you haven't, make sure you subscribe to get free updates and information. And I know I haven't been sending out emails, and I apologize for taking so long between this video and the last. I finished writing 2 books in the last month, and I'm plotting the next 2 and the one after that. So I've been really busy with my business. We got sick. 2020 just keeps happening, but I will make sure to put that on for you. I hope you have a fantastic day. Like and subscribe to make sure you can keep getting updated. And if you have any questions, you can email at me at brittany.pearl, that's perl.teach@gmail.com. You can also put comments in the questions, and I will do my best to answer them in a timely manner. Again, I apologize for taking so long with this. you can only get done what you can get done. I've written my second picture book. I sent everything to the illustrator. I finished my last novel. And like I said, I'm prepping the next 2. So life has been busy, but it's been good. So make sure that you do all that. And I hope you have a fantastic day and keep on keeping on. Bye-bye.